Welcome to a very special edition of Commodore Clash. On today's episode, sports editor Andrew Wilf and revenue sports specialist Jonah Barbin will break down Vanderbilt football's loss to UNLV, preview their game against Kentucky, and talk some NFL football. Tune in now.
Welcome back into Commodore Clash. I am Jonah Barbin, joined, as always, by the great sports editor of The Hustler, Andrew Wilf. And boy, we have some football to break down for you today, and it doesn't start that well for Commodore fans. As on Saturday at Allegiant Stadium, home of the Las Vegas Raiders, the Commodores fell to UNLV 40-37. Absolute heartbreaker. Andrew, biggest takeaways from this one?
Biggest takeaways, I think, of ball security. Vanderbilt had 4 turnovers, all gut-wrenching and incredibly errant mistakes. First turnover, Vanderbilt goes to do an end around to Junior Sherrill, gets completely infiltrated. The UNLV defender hops 2 Vanderbilt receivers, touchdown the other way. A.J. Swan throws an interception at the end of the second quarter. Ken Seals had a fumble. And the most important error, late in the game, late in that first half, Vanderbilt's Wesley Schelling, Vanderbilt's long snapper, misses the snap, goes to the lap of a Vanderbilt receiver instead of the punter, and UNLV gets the ball on the 10-yard line. UNLV had 13 points off of Vanderbilt turnovers, and that's just unacceptable, especially when the margin of error is so razor thin, Jonah, in SEC games. They really need to clean up their act incredibly quickly.
Certainly, Andrew, you got to take care of the rock, and I really liked what you said in your Commodore brunch this week. You talked about it was the best quarter and then the worst quarter there in the first half for Vanderbilt. They come out, go up 17-0. You're thinking, this is a really good game. A.J. Swan starting to make better decisions, hits London Humphreys for that big touchdown. The defense gets a couple stops. You're starting to think, wow. And then everything, turnovers. It's a domino effect with this team, especially with a young squad that maybe has some confidence issues with their struggles early in the season. There's a snowball effect. There really is, and that's what we saw there on Sunday. The defense, again, just blown secondary coverage. I mean, guys just beating you downfield. It just can't happen, especially at the end of the game. And we'll talk about the end of the game in a second. And the other thing for me, Andrew, which I said was a key coming into this game, is there's no consistency in the running game.
None.
No consistency. So, again, the leader in carries was Patrick Smith. He had about 12 carries or 13 carries. Cedric Alexander had 7 carries. Gillespie had a couple carries. I mean, none of these guys can get going. You've got to choose one guy, feed him, and get some consistency out.
And let's break it down here. Vanderbilt defense, the tackling was just not fundamental. And I think that starts with the secondary. The secondary has been Vanderbilt's Achilles heel the entire season. Jalen Mahoney will be questionable against Kentucky. And DeRicky Wright, I saw him outside of Wilson Hall yesterday. He's in a walking boot, and he had a minor ankle sprain. He definitely won't be playing if he has a walking boot. He's so tough to play through that injury again in the UNLV game. But I see those really 2 big injuries. And then Vanderbilt's just not getting to the quarterback, Jonah. I know Darren Agu came back from injury a few weeks ago, but there really isn't much brewing. To allow 40 points to an offense that didn't even have their starting quarterback, Doug Brumfield. How does that happen, Jonah?
Andrew, we were talking about it. Doug Brumfield, not that good of a quarterback. The defense should be able to have their way with him. Well, it wasn't even Doug Brumfield. Jordan Mailata just lit him up. Absolutely lit him up. It was ridiculous. Ricky White as well, wide receiver, lit him up 165 yards, including on that last drive to set him up in field goal range. Absolutely burned the Vanderbilt secondary. What else is new? And not even that. We talk about it on the defensive side, on UNLV's defensive side. We keep saying Vanderbilt can't get the running game going, right? UNLV's best linebacker, Jackson Woodard, ejected for targeting in the second quarter, leading the league, leading his team in tackles coming into the game. So they still couldn't get anything going with that front seven weekend. So Andrew, I just don't know where you go from here.
And I don't know, it's September. I didn't know Christmas season's around the corner, but I guess it is because Vanderbilt kept giving UNLV gifts. Let's think about those 4 turnovers. And then at the end of the game, Vanderbilt is tied. They get a great interception from Nicholas Rinaldi. 33-yard field goal, missed. And then you're on defense, and it's 3rd and 6. You call a timeout, stupid timeout. that a player made, not Clark Lee. So now UNLV has time to recuperate, a team with no timeouts, and then they take advantage of a single high safety on Vanderbilt, infiltrate Martel Height, have a gain of 48 yards, and then they make a 40-plus yard kick. And when we analyze this game, it's just if you're going to give gifts to teams, you should not be playing in the SEC, because this Kentucky game will be not even a battle, it will be a trounce. Jonah, let's talk about this Kentucky game, and what's your prediction?
I mean, I could see it being an absolute bloodbath. The line last time I checked, Andrew, was at 14. I don't think that's nearly enough.
You don't think it's fair to Kentucky?
No, I don't think it's fair to Kentucky at all. I think, first of all, I know Kentucky hasn't played a real opponent yet, but they're 3-0. They've looked really good. Their defense ranks number 12 in the nation for points allowed. Ray Davis, little spoiler, he's killing it. Also leads the SEC among running backs in receiving yards, so he's a dual threat. As we've seen from the guy, we know this. Maxwell Harrison, second-rated PFF corner in the nation so far. We're talking national ranks here. Vanderbilt can't get past UNLV. Vanderbilt's struggling with Hawaii. Now we're talking a team that has not playoff aspirations necessarily, but they have certainly they have bowl aspirations. And I wouldn't say it's crazy to think Kentucky could be a 8-9 win type team.
Yeah, absolutely. When I looked at this Kentucky team compared to last year, Vanderbilt won in quite a disastrous game. There was a lot of turnovers, but they won in Lexington against a quarterback that was drafted second round by the Tennessee Titans, and Will Levis. He could have been a first rounder. They have Leary now taking charge, but this Vanderbilt team is at such a different time. To give everyone context, I think it was week 9 last season. They had a lot of tough losses. They showed fight, and this Vanderbilt football team had a new sense of identity. It's not like nothing's been shown. We haven't seen anything that's like you're going to have a miraculous game. And from what we can go against, of course they're not going to cover the 14 points. Ray Davis, he has a lot to prove to this Vanderbilt team. I know he left in the transfer portal, but he definitely has this game circled. And then we think about A.J. Swan. He's really been underwhelming. I think to play at a quarterback at the SEC level, you have to be quite elite. And he has been making very bad decisions, specifically in the turnover battles. And he was quite inaccurate against UNLV, Jonah.
Yeah, and you could give some credit to UNLV's defense, right? They did hold Michigan to 35, which was a storyline we kind of dismissed, and still one I don't want to harp on when we're talking about UNLV's defense, because that game, once Blake Corum scores his second, third touchdown of the game, Michigan doesn't care. They know they're going to win that game. But now we're talking about a legitimate defense that A.J. Swan is going up against. And if you're shooting yourself in the foot against a subpar defense, what are you going to do against the Kentucky? So I think 14, I would go as far to say as, what camera do I look in? Minus 14 is disrespectful to Kentucky. It should be minus 28. I think Kentucky's going to give Vanderbilt a bath in this game. This team has a lot of flaws, a lot of things to work on.
At the same time, all the past Vanderbilt wins that we've seen, Florida, the tough game against Missouri, the Kentucky win last year, it was when everyone was doubting them, and it was when everyone was like, Clark Lee, this isn't the right guy, this isn't the right team, Mike Wright isn't the guy. And it kind of seems like that same type of atmosphere. Maybe I'm being a little bit too positive, Jonah, and too optimistic, but I really do think this could be. This is the game to win. This is the time to turn around, because if this is an ugly game, they are in for a 2-win season. Because this sets the tone for the rest of the SEC play, and it's going to be really exciting. Before we end this segment, let's just give a quick shout-out to London Humphreys, who made the starting receiver role in the depth chart today. He really has been playing great the past 2 games, 109 yards and a touchdown against Wake Forest, and he had another great game against UNLV. Jonah, really exciting to have such a young player in the starting role.
Well, let me say my one positive, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be Mr. Pessimist, and maybe you figured out my strategy here. If I throw the pessimism out about this team, then they'll turn it around, because I've been way too optimistic in the past. The wide receiver core. I love the wide receiving core. You've got Will Shepherd, you've got McGowan, who's been awesome. London Humphreys has been the story of the year so far. And then you have Quincy Skinner, who again has been nursing a hamstring injury.
And a great touchdown against
And a great touchdown. And this guy is for real, an amazing person, and nursing that hamstring injury still. Quincy is going to be explosive out there as well. So you've got 4 really great receivers and more freshman presence there. So shout out to the receiving core, and maybe they can help turn things around against Kentucky.
A lot of exciting things to watch. Before we end the show, let's transition to the National Football League. Jonah, favorite player fantasy-wise, and what was your biggest surprise from this weekend?
Oh, Andrew, take me over to Los Angeles and gave me Puka Nacua, receiver for the Los Angeles Rams, looking like the pickup of the year. The kid can absolutely ball, getting like 15 targets a game in the absence of Cooper Kupp. And let me tell you, when Cooper Kupp comes back, a lot of people think that's going to go down. I don't think it's going to go down too much. Maybe Tutu Atwell's targets will go down just a bit, but the pickup of Kyron Williams in fantasy football and Puka Nacua, if you got either of those guys, because Sean McVay said, we're just going to show you a totally new look, shout out to Los Angeles. They could be a good team this year.
Absolutely. I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go the other side of the NFC East and Daniel Jones. Terrible first half, but mounted the Giants to their greatest comeback in team history. Didn't play well against the Cowboys. In fact, they didn't score any points, but he's a guy that can be consistently 20, 22 points on fantasy. It's going to be really exciting. And then another quarterback that I've been really impressed with, not from a fantasy-wise, but from a leadership point of view, is Derek Carr, leading the Saints to a 2-0 record. He's been incredibly efficient, hasn't really had any bad turnovers, and it's going to be exciting to watch how this Saints team does without Jameis and a few years out of Drew Brees and Sean Payton era.
Man, it is an exciting time for the NFL. It's an exciting time for college football. Another college football matchup to have your eyes on this weekend. I think like 2:30 p.m. Central. Oregon and Mr. Primetime, Deion Sanders. What a win they had over Colorado State in overtime. That is going to be a huge game. Andrew, thank you for being here as always. For Andrew Wilf, I am Jonah Barbin saying have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will see you next week right here on Commodore Clash.